Killer whale, a name to strike terror into seafarers in all the oceans of the world. The Romans called it orca, meaning the demon from hell. It's really a dolphin, the largest of its group. A male can weigh up to 8 tons, and his dorsal fin alone stands 6 feet tall. The killer is a formidable predator. Like wolves, they sometimes hunt in groups. Sailors have often reported packs of them attacking great whales over 10 times their own size. Here, in a unique piece of archive film, a blue whale is pursued and mortally wounded in Baja California. Although they do not prey on humans or indiscriminately attack marine life, there is something inherently terrifying about such huge, efficient, and deadly animals. Yet no one has ever been killed by these so-called demons from the deep, and thousands of people gather daily to watch killer whale shows at aquariums all over North America. It's not fear, but fascination that draws the crowds. This little girl is deaf. She communicates in sign language and is saying, "I love you." In captivity, this whale displays charm and intelligence, but in the wild, it remains a swift and deadly killer. The transformation in public opinion from great fear to adoration can be dated to a Canadian television news bulletin in July 1964. A killer whale had been shot to serve as the model for a life-size sculpture for Vancouver Aquarium, but it didn't die. Instead, it was towed by a line attached to a harpoon in its back to Vancouver Harbor and held captive in a makeshift pen. People were amazed at its docile behavior. Thousands visited the harbor to gaze at the whale circling in the pool. She was dubbed Moby Doll. After 55 days, she began to feed, taking 200 pounds of fish per day laced with vitamin pills. Scientists were astonished by the whale's complex vocalizations.
And she's making various sounds which you're recording. Could you give us a listen to these?
Yeah, certainly. These were made with a hydrophone in the water.
You any idea just what these noises might be in response to?
Oh, they may be curiosity on the part of the whale. They might be a sign of nervousness on her part, or she may be calling out into the water for others of her kind.
I gather it'll be some time then before you can classify these words and make this dictionary, which you hope to do eventually.
Yes, it will. What I intend to try and group these various sounds into their separate groups and play these back to the whale and see what response she makes to each particular noise.
After 88 days in captivity, Moby Doll died. At the autopsy, she turned out to be a young male, and voices like his can still be heard in the open ocean off the coast of Vancouver Island. In Georgia Strait, subsequent research has gradually built up a portrait of killers, not as terrifying predators, but as sociable, vocal mammals, living a complex family life in groups called pods. These voices are those of a group called J-Pod. Each pod has its own dialect. In this area, round the south of Vancouver Island, there are 3 resident pods, totaling between 80 and 90 whales. The dialect of J-Pod is very like the voice of Moby Dal, recorded in 1964. A pod has a repertoire of about a dozen calls. A call started by one animal is usually taken up and repeated by the others. Although the killer's language remains a mystery, we can recognize several distinct dialects. This is where Moby Dal was harpooned over 20 years ago, and this is his surviving family. Further south, round the San Juan Islands, between Vancouver Island and the Washington coast, American researchers are also well acquainted with J-Pod. The home range of this pod extends over 200 miles, and the whales make a full circuit about every 10 days. In many ways, it is an ideal pod to work with. It's regularly present and exceptionally tame. The structure of J-Pod is typical. 8 females with 6 juveniles of various ages are followed by 3 adult males, all of them sons of one or another of the females. Breaching like this, jumping clear of the water and re-entering with a loud splash, is almost certainly a social activity for communication within the group. Researchers have been able to photograph and name all the members of the 3 resident pods, identifying them by the shape of their fins and any scars on their gray saddles. These photographic records are used in a directory to enable others to join in the work. The results of years of painstaking work are just emerging. It appears, for example, that killer whales may live in the wild for as long as 70 years, but each female produces a calf, on average, only once every 5 years. The whales have their favorite fishing grounds, where the salmon congregate in dense shoals. All 3 pods patrol the stretch of coastline from Washington into the Canadian waters. There seems to be no territorial division between the pods. They usually fish as a family group, but at other times they gather together in a superpod with as many as 90 members. J-Pod is the most frequently seen, but another of the resident pods shows up regularly. They are known as K-Pod, and the largest male, K1. All along Haro Strait, between the San Juans and Vancouver Island, pleasure craft and cliffs alike provide a grandstand view of the whales as they pass. Whale watching has become a popular pastime in these parts. Many of the watchers contribute to the scientists' work by reporting whale sightings among the islands. But you don't need to live by the sea to watch whales. Today, they're a branch of show business, one of the top box office draws. There are heated debates about keeping killer whales in captivity. Some people say the whales are being exploited to provide entertainment. Many aquariums have discredited the business by failing to take proper care of the animals in their charge. Of the 127 wild killers which have been caught and taken into captivity since 1961, just 35 are alive today. As a result, public sympathy has moved towards banning shows like this altogether. But there is another side of the argument. Hundreds of thousands of people visit SeaWorld every year to watch killer whales put on their show. As trainers appear to risk their lives swimming with animals who could easily kill them, one question must be asked: how is it done? Training takes place between shows. It's not a matter of material rewards, nor is there any use of force. Whale trainers soon learn that whales are too independent to take bribes and too big to take orders. The whales are not rewarded with fish. They have all they want to eat all day. Their reward is the cheerful and sometimes strenuous interaction which they enjoy with their trainers. Some of the signals look obvious, but the response to them is very subtle and individual. If anyone else gestured like this to one of these whales, it would understand perfectly what was wanted and probably do nothing. The whale will respond actively only to a signal from someone it knows and trusts. Such communication between people and animals takes time to develop. Some animals respond to constant attention and interaction better than others. Dogs, for example, are much easier to train than cats. Killer whales, as the SeaWorld trainers have discovered, respond even better than dogs. They show every sign of enjoying human companionship and of appreciating the variety which the trainers exert themselves to provide. The performances which develop from the training sessions are almost all originally the whales' ideas. They show their trainers what they like to do, and then those ideas may find their way into the show. The impact on public opinion has been colossal. The days are gone when a killer whale trainer was regarded as someone on a par with a lion tamer, risking life and loss of limb by consorting with known man-eaters. What the whales think of it remains a mystery. Some people argue that they are tormented prisoners, slowly going insane in the echoing confines of their pool. Others reply that they are healthy and in apparently good spirits. The fact remains that more than half of all captive killer whales die after an average captivity of 3 years. Whether they should be banned or encouraged, the shows draw huge crowds. There is nothing to compare with the power and grace of killer whales at full speed and at close quarters. Because the whales are so intelligent, there's always a danger they'll get bored. So the trainers see to it that no two shows are the same. This particular stunt was invented by the whale himself during an exercise session and was built into the show within a year, once the trainer had mastered it. All the stunts, or behaviors as they're called, come from natural behavior which has been exaggerated or extended beyond their normal duration. In the wild, looking around the surface is called spy hopping. For the show, the whale prolongs the spy hop into a protracted survey. The perfect synchronization of their movements adds to the spectacle, but perfect coordination is a way of life among whales, and it's easy to encourage these displays. Whale shows have changed people's feelings about killers from fear into admiration. This will benefit the species, but many newly converted whale lovers now argue that it's criminal to capture wild whales and confine them for life in a small pool. The solution to this argument is to set up a captive breeding program. But killer whales are notoriously difficult to breed in captivity. SeaWorld is one of the few aquariums to have achieved this aim. They credit their success to the good relationship between trainers and whales. In learning to entertain the whales in their keeping, the trainers have found that spray is much appreciated. The killer turns out to be a sensual animal with thin, sensitive skin which responds to gentle contact. It seems to enjoy the hosepipe much as a cat enjoys being stroked. Looking after killer whales needs constant study to understand and anticipate their needs. When Candu, one of the SeaWorld females, became pregnant, the trainers spent 6 months teaching her to present her mammaries whenever she was touched in the right place, as she would be by the baby, then feeding, so that when her baby was born, she would allow it to feed, giving it every chance of survival. Captive whales had given birth before, but in each case the calf had died because the mother couldn't or wouldn't feed it. On September 26, 1985, after 15 months gestation, Candu gave birth in front of the cameras, and this unique piece of film flashed round the world. The calf was named Baby Shamu after her father. She took her first breath unaided, and soon she was swimming strongly round the pool, to the obvious delight of the SeaWorld staff. With another female in close attendance, just as in the wild, Candu was evidently relaxed and confident enough to feed Baby Shamu from the start, as she had been taught. Before her first birthday, Baby Shamu was taking part in the public display along with her parents. She didn't have to learn the routine. As a baby whale, she naturally follows the adults. From a business point of view, Baby Shamu is undoubtedly a monumental asset. She is the star of the show. But she's more important than that. She demonstrates that it is possible to breed and rear killer whales in captivity. As more and more countries bow to public opinion and refuse to allow killer whales to be captured in their waters, captive breeding will become essential if shows like this are to continue. The survival of wild whales depends on public opinion, and people respond more positively to pleas on behalf of an animal which they feel they know. The whales in the shows here and in other well-maintained aquariums have done much to change people's minds. Today, instead of viewing killers as man-eaters to be harpooned on sight, they are regarded as mysterious, lovable creatures in need of protection. The influence of public sympathy has proved a powerful asset in this remote bay in northern Vancouver Island. Near the bay, called Robson Bight, is a small cove known to whale scientists as the Rubbing Beach. It is a magical place and the site of some very mysterious behavior. What makes it so attractive to whales is difficult to pin down. It is sheltered, and the bottom consists of smooth, flat pebbles, but that's true of other bays in the area. The water is not especially clear, but that wouldn't matter to whales because they perceive the world through sound more than sight. One theory is that the acoustic configuration of the bay is attractive to them in some way humans cannot perceive. Some visit when they happen to be passing. Others journey from far away, making straight for the cove. All of them, when they arrive, rub themselves luxuriously against the smooth pebbles of the bottom. Underwater, their ghostly shapes glide out of the gloom with leisurely but deliberate movements. No one quite knows what this behavior means. That it's something special is evident from the whales' voices. Nowhere else do they make sounds like this. In 1979, a new road opened up the north of the island to logging. The timber is being extracted for building materials and for wood pulp to make paper. Clear felled hillsides nearby are a grim indication of what could happen to Robson Bight. Already, the unique sounds which killer whales make here have a continuous background of noise, the sound of the propellers of the logging boats making their way to the sawmills. Suddenly, it became urgent to protect the Rubbing Beach from industry, and public opinion has come to the rescue. Due in a large part to heightened public awareness, the seashore is now protected. There is a plan, soon to become law, to prohibit logging for 2 miles on either side of the rubbing beach and for a quarter of a mile inland. Explanations have ranged from the hygienic to the mystical. The whales might simply be grooming themselves, using the comfortably smooth pebbles to remove parasites from their thin and sensitive skins. Other researchers speak of sexual connection. The rubbing beach is one of only 3 places where a wild whale has been seen to give birth, but nobody has yet come up with a fully convincing account of what they are doing. Whatever it is, the reprieve of the rubbing beach is a victory for whale scientists, for whale lovers, and of course, for the whales themselves. "25 years ago, the logging would no doubt have gone ahead, and the whales might well have been systematically exterminated to protect the loggers. In 1955, the U.S. Navy used machine guns to slaughter hundreds of whales off Iceland to protect the fishery. Today, after the transformation in public opinion, such an act would be totally unthinkable. To understand whales better, scientists have started to record and analyze whale sounds. They've found their contact calls are unique to each pod. It is clear that these sets of signals, called dialects, are passed down from generation to generation. Only 2 groups of mammals have the ability to imitate and learn sounds. One is dolphins, including the killer whale, and the other is humans. They find their prey by echolocation, a sophisticated form of sonar that is so accurate that even in murky water they can tell the difference between salmon and cod from 60 yards. In addition to the echolocation clicks and a dozen standard calls, killers often slap the water with their fins or tails. While no one understands the meaning of their calls, it's obvious that they use sound to communicate. Here, a female is trying to sleep, but her baby wants to play. From the surface, the scene looks tranquil, but underwater recordings of the episode tell a different story. As the female gradually loses her patience, she raises her voice. Whales have been known to resort to chastisement, but in this case, tail slapping sends an audible message. Trying to interpret what the whales are saying is a challenge. Their world is so different that the dream of translating their language into human terms remains remote. From time to time, the pod gathers together to rest for a few hours. They lie drowsily on the surface, breathing every 30 seconds or so, and murmuring to each other in subdued voices. At regular intervals, the whole pod dives for 5 minutes at a time. The dreamy calls seem to coordinate these dives, keeping the pod close together at all times. But why this togetherness is important to an animal with no natural enemies is another of the killer whale's mysteries. When the pod makes contact with salmon, the voices and the behavior change abruptly. The pod splits up into small groups, which charge off in what appears to be an uncoordinated scramble for food. The calls may simply be excitement, or they may also serve to keep the whales in contact with each other. Individuals can wander miles from the group in the exhilaration of the chase. Fishermen will often say that whales hunt as a team, driving the salmon into a bunch so that each whale can take its turn at feeding. But the scientific evidence suggests that it's every whale for itself when fish are scarce. Close to the shores of Alaska, there are enormous numbers of salmon, returning to their breeding rivers every summer. This pod was filmed in Prince William Sound during the summer of 1987. The sound is silent on the surface. Underwater, it's alive with the calls of feeding pods and the buzz and rattle of their sonar. Prince William Sound was a favorite haunt of killer whales because of the abundance of food in summer. Now, after the oil spill, its future is uncertain. There are signs that the salmon are returning, but it's too soon to be sure in what numbers. It lies at the head of the Gulf of Alaska, and here, in the western part of the Sound, there were about 10 pods which visited regularly, totaling about 170 animals. Now, who knows? Some pods seem to spend the whole summer in the Sound, but others visit only briefly. At other times of the year, the same pods have been seen near Kodiak Island to the west and in southeast Alaska, a feeding range of over 600 miles. The work of following and photographing the Alaskan whales led to the identification of some true residents, pods which are seen year after year in the same areas of the Sound. Like the killer whales further south, they keep in contact as they travel, not only by calling, but physically as well. The whales are not the only predators on the salmon. During the short summer season, the fishing boats still come out in force. Seine net fishermen have no trouble from whales, but long liners claim they take fish from their hooks. Faced by competition, they're prepared to fight back. The white notch in the leading edge of this dorsal fin is a bullet hole. Evidently, the great transformation of human attitudes towards killer whales is not quite complete. One of the Prince William Sound researchers found that while some whales were hard to approach, others took a close interest in his boat. A particular young female, nicknamed Bubbles, paid frequent visits whenever the research vessel was passing. Whale watchers all down the west coast of North America know another, more ominous type of killer whale. The scientists call them transients, to distinguish them from the resident pods. Transients appear only fleetingly in other parts of the killer's range, but in Alaska they are seen in 1/3 of all whale encounters. They are known to differ in several ways from the sociable, fish-eating residents. For one thing, their small groups travel almost silently. Their voices, if they call at all, are distinctly different from the residents, but most of the time they move without calling, for a very good reason. They feed primarily on other marine mammals. Their main prey has ears. Typically, they sneak around headlands, searching bays for unwary seals. They can cover large distances. One pod was seen in Alaska in June, and in the San Juan Islands nearly 800 miles away only 3 months later. The transients are the largest and fiercest predators in the sea. Here, in Baja California, a group of them were seen attacking a young blue whale, a violent and bloody scene often reported, but never seen on television. Scenes like this were responsible in the past for the fear felt by sailors of killer whales. If they can tear huge chunks out of a blue whale, a swimmer wouldn't stand a chance. Divers fear killer whales more than sharks, yet the only confirmed attack by a killer on a human happened to a California surfer. He was probably mistaken for a seal. The whale dropped him immediately, apparently realizing its mistake. The surfer escaped with no serious injuries. Scientists have recently discovered that residents, as well as transients, will capture and eat marine mammals if fish is in short supply, and in the most spectacular way. At Punta Norte, in the far south of Argentina, the whales patrol the water's edge in search of fish. They can come close to shore because the beach drops off steeply to water deep enough for them to swim in. The pods here have all been identified using the same techniques as the North American researchers, checking the fin for scars and noting the shape of the gray saddle. This particular family group is here throughout the year. It has 3 members, a female with a calf, and a large adult male with a slightly curved fin. The male regularly comes inshore to hunt for fish, while the other 2 wait a quarter of a mile out to sea. Periods of cruising along the beach alternate with violent activity as the whale locates his prey. The gulls hover around looking for scraps. Occasionally, a fish sprints for safety right into the surf, followed by the whale. He is nearly 30 feet long. nearby sea lions are untouched, but visibly alarmed. The steep beach and the strong surf make it relatively easy for the killer to inch back into his element. There, he resumes fishing, but he has been very close to a form of food which is more nourishing and easier to catch than fish: sea lions and their young. This is how predators learn to take new prey. The shape of the beach at low tide is going to be very important in what happens next. The reef of beach rock is split in one place by a deep channel, which leads all the way up to the high tide mark at the edge of the shingle beach. At high tide, the sea lions are relatively safe when they swim over the rocky shallows. But they need to know precisely where they are. If they drift over the channel or sit in the surf at its head, the killer whale's sonar will detect them. Attacks like this occur all the year round, but they are often unsuccessful. Although they probably developed by chance from the inshore fishing technique, almost all the Patagonian killers have now learned to hunt in this way. The peak of their success is in March and April, when the growing pups are becoming adventurous, but are still naive. Hanging in the water immediately in front of the whale's jaws looks foolhardy, but the adult sea lions know to an inch where the edge of the rock is, underwater, and the whale won't or can't cross the line. The adults know the score. It's the inexperienced youngsters which are at risk. The male takes his prey out into deeper water, where his mate and their calf are waiting to be fed. Sometimes the female comes inshore as well, but it's the male which does most of the hunting, several times a day during the sea lion's breeding season. The losses to the sea lion population as a whole are not significant, but to the whale family, when fish is in short supply, sea lions are a valuable supplement to their diet. At Punta Norte, it's not only sea lions which fall victim to the whales, they also take much larger prey. On the same beach, a small colony of elephant seals breeds. As the young males approach the end of their first year, they spar to determine their pecking order for future seasons. The conflicts are ritualized. They're rehearsals for the real thing in 2 or 3 years' time, when the senior bull will have the right to mate with every female he can defend. Although very little damage is ever done, the tussles are important because they determine the young bull's social position. They also tend to distract his attention from immediate events, like his position on the beach. Here's the attack again, in slow motion. The struggle for status was too absorbing for the bull with his back to the sea. He failed to react to the obvious panic of his rival. The male carries the still living seal out to his family, 400 yards offshore. Observations suggest that the young whale is often given the seal to kill as part of its training for life in these waters. Generally, it's the transients who are the true killers, but here, resident pods patrolling for fish have learned to take seals. The gulls and giant petrels gather around the kill, like marine vultures. The comparison is apt. The killer whale is the tiger of the sea, the top predator. In all the oceans of the world, its social behavior and its evident intelligence, together with its size and its power, make it invincible. Only mankind has ever challenged the killer's supremacy. Like the tiger, the lion, or the polar bear, the killer whale has been misjudged by the one species which is unable to accept its mastery of an alien habitat. But the future for the new generation of killer whales looks brighter. They are no longer being massacred out of misplaced fear, and efforts are being made to protect their environment. Yet respect and understanding of this magnificent creature is not new. The people who know the killer whale best, the American Indians of the Pacific Northwest, have respected it and regarded it as an ally for thousands of years. One clan in particular takes the killer whale as its totem. They tell this story. Naatslane was a great and respected hunter who liked to go hunting with his 3 brothers-in-law. The brothers were jealous of his success. They left him on a reef to drown when the sea came in. The youngest brother didn't want to leave him, but he was unable to help. A bird appeared and took Naatslane to a secret world inside the reef. There were people there who put him in a bubble to drift safely ashore. Naatslane's wife was sent for and told to bring his tools to him in secret. He carved a mean-looking monster, which he called Keet. I have carved you to avenge a wrongdoing. 3 men will be in a canoe. Kill the 2 bad ones, but spare the youngest. The killer whale executed the 2 brothers and swam the youngest back to shore. Natsane then made Keat promise never to harm man again and let him loose into the sea. So far, the sea's most fearsome killer has not broken those vows.